Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Address-Based Layout Randomization. I'm joined by Ryan, who's just looking fabulous today, sir. Glad to have you with us.
Sporting a new
And
sweatshirt.
he's kicking that. He's rocking that new sweatshirt, that limited edition sweatshirt. And
Yes.
today we get to talk about Atomic Red Team. So let's get right to it. I'm going to switch over here. We're going to do this thing, and then we're going to do this thing. This is brought to you by Black Hills Information Security. We do IR, SOC, penetration testing services, just all around general security hugs. It is also brought to you by Antisyphon Security Training. We do security training, but like instead of it being expensive and good, we're just good and inexpensive because, people have budgets. All right. So I want to jump right in. And once again, kind of tapping through a lot of my labs and a lot of my classes. And the reason why I'm doing that is one, it's just easy content. But two, I put this in my classes because I think they're important topics for people to cover. So we're going to get right into Atomic Red Team. For those of you that do not know, Atomic Red Team is a fantastic tool. If I can spy it. There we go. Atomic Red Team. My head just stopped working for a second. Still haven't recovered from Wild West Hack and Fest at all. An Atomic Red Team allows organizations to do adversarial emulation on the cheap. Or I shouldn't say emulation. It's not emulation. Emulation's different. This is simulation. And that doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it allows you to execute scripts that run through kind of what an attacker would actually run on your environment. Now, to understand the Atomic Red Team, the first thing that you have to understand is the MITRE attack technique matrix. So if I go to MITRE, attack, let's see if Bing finds it. There we go. Here, let's go to the enterprise attack matrix. We have all these different techniques that attackers can use, right? And all of these are broken out by these T numbers. You see that we have like T1189, T1190. Execution is really where most of it's at for the Atomic Red Team. T1059.1, 2, 3, and 4 under these sub techniques and categories that can be utilized. And this can seem really daunting for an organization because if you're like, oh my gosh, we're doing a Unix shell and can we abuse a Unix shell? And here's all the different ways that we can abuse the Unix. Oh gosh, there's just a lot going on. So what are we going to do? Well, that's where Atomic Red Team can actually jump in and where Atomic Red Team can help. Because if we look at the structure of a directory with Atomic Red Team, if I go down to the C drive on my VM and we go to Atomic Red Team, we go into the atomics, each one of these numbers has an example technique that directly ties back to the MITRE attack technique matrix. Now, the goal of using these is to actually test and see your organization's capabilities in detecting these types of attacks. And in order to do that, you actually go into Invoke Atomic Red Team, and then you can run the scripts and basically execute them. Now, there's a number of ways that you can execute them. You can execute them by a directory, or you can actually invoke specific Atomic Red Team scripts to be executed. So I'm going to walk through just a general kind of walkthrough of the way that you can do this in your organization, and you can make it sticky. And what I mean by that is it's not just something that you do and no one really cares except for the security hardcore geeks in your organization. How do you actually make management care about adversarial simulation, adversary emulation, and Atomic Red Team? So let's go ahead and let's jump right in. As I said, we're going to be following the instructions that I have in my lab VM, which by the way is free. If you just do a search for John Strand virtual machine, Antisyphon, it'll take you right to the website where you can download the virtual machine and do everything that I am doing here. So let's go ahead and let's get rolling. Just going to follow the instructions. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to disable Windows Defender. Now, this is actually really critical. And the reason why this is critical is because we do not want antivirus to necessarily get in the way. And if you're going to run this on an environment that has a full EDR or antivirus, you would want to run it on a system that is domain joined. And you would also want to run it on a computer system that is configured in such a way that it has its AV or EDR set up in non-blocking mode. You want it to generate a report or output of what it detected and what it would have done. We don't want it just to kill the PowerShell execution. Then we can say, well, we're protected against everything. Well done, everybody. well done. No, what we want to do is we want to do something where it executes the malware or the malware checks, the simulation checks, and it'll tell us what it would have done. So it'll allow these things to execute because Atomic Red Team does a lot of stuff, as you're going to see here in just a little bit. So we're not trying to test if it'll just stop PowerShell. We're going to try to see all the other things that it can actually detect as well. So now we've got Windows Defender is done. And I'm going to open up another command prompt, and we're going to do a quick stand-in for your EDR. This is a free tool called Bluespawn. And it's really just capture the flag EDR that was created by some university students out of Virginia for a capture the flag event. It is not a full EDR environment. Rather, you should look at it as, something that is more or less just a science project for university students. But it's actually pretty cool. And it detects a large number of different things that you would see insofar as attacks that are running out there. So what it's doing is it's checking WinLog helper, DLL. We've got port monitors, accessibility features, existing services, things of that nature, masquerading logon scripts, and so on. So what we want to do is we want to set up Atomic Red Team and configure it so it's ready to rock on this system. So we're going to go back to our PowerShell script, and I'm going to CD into the Atomic Red Team directory, specifically into the directory Invoke Atomic Red Team, just following the instructions. I'm going to make sure that PowerShell YAML is installed. More than likely already is, but I just do this just to make sure it's all okay. Just takes a couple of seconds. Go ahead and run that. There we go. Says it's already running, which is good. And then we're going to import the Invoke Atomic Red Team modules. So we got that set up. Now, in my my instructions, we run invoke atomic tests all. But I'm going to show you something different. I got this from Carrie Roberts today. She sent me a really nice write-up on how you can invoke specific Atomic Red Team tests, okay? And we can invoke them one at a time, or we can invoke them in a script like we have here. So if I were to invoke a test, let's just say I'm going to invoke Atomic 1057, right? I can basically highlight, copy that, and I can paste that in, and I can run that specific check, right? And if we go back and we see if Bluespawn caught it, it didn't. So whatever Bluespawn's checking for, it did not detect that one. Well, let's see if we can actually run something else. Go ahead and run that. There we go. See what it does. WinLog helper. Oh, it detected that one. Very, very cool. Can it detect 1013 for port monitors? Let's go ahead and try that one. Once again, these all go back to the MITRE ATT&CK technique matrix. All right, they don't even have an Atomic Red Team for that. Let's try registry key modification. Here we go. Run those. There we go. See if it detected that. And it looks like it did, in fact, detect that one as well. All right, so that's cool. But let's say hypothetically that we have a nation state level attacker that we want to test. And this is really where the politics of Atomic Red Team come in handy, right? So what you can do is you can actually run multiple different scripts all in one shot. So how would you go about doing that? And more importantly, why would you go about doing that? Well, the reason why you would do it is because of this. Let me go over here. We have CISA alerts, all right? And if we look at the CISA alerts, we have tactics and techniques, procedures of like Russian nation state attackers. And in this write-up of CISA, they're telling us what what MITRE ATT&CK techniques they've seen the Russians use, right? So I took some of these and I loaded them into a file. And you're not going to have Atomic Red Teams for like initial access and things of that nature, right? For like recon, but a lot of the post-exploitation execution things that you would see in the MITRE ATT&CK technique matrix, you would, right? So what we want to do ideally is whenever one of these alerts comes out, we actually want to test this. And there's two main reasons why we want to test this. The first one is to make executives happy. So I went through and I already took this alert and I took a handful of these different techniques and I dropped them into this script that we're going to call a PS1 script, and then we're going to invoke it with Atomic Red Team. So instead of invoking every single atomic that the Atomic Red Team has, we're actually going to go through and we're just going to run a handful of them as it relates to the specific alert, at least the ones that are testable. So I have this file that I've loaded into Notepad++, and we're going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to call it Russia. And then I am going to save it in the Atomic Red Team folder in the Invoke Atomic Red Team. And we're going to save it as a PowerShell.ps1 file. I know it's in here. I just saw it. Windows PowerShell. There we go. And we're going to call it Russia.ps1. Like so. And we're going to save it. Now we have it in this directory. So now what we can do is we can actually run that file. Is it Russia? There we go. Russia.ps1. And now it's going to execute those individual tests. And I have it paused 3 seconds in between. Once again, that's another really cool tip that Carrie gave me. You can actually put that start sleep option in your scripts. Now, over here, you can see that there was a whole bunch of detections that fired. And we can see exactly what numbers of those detections fired, right? We can see that we detected, 1484. We can see that we had a 1004, 1060, 1060, 1484. And these things may not match up directly with what we actually executed, because some of these executions will do multiple different things. So now we can sit down with our EDR and we can start having a conversation with our detection tuning team about what do we have for detections on these specific techniques. And I see that I have 2 with the exact same number, which is kind of a bummer, but it's the same concept. Will actually show up there as well. So did it detect everything? Hell no, it didn't. And that's okay, right? The goal of doing the Atomic Red Teams is to actually see what your EDR is detecting and what it's not detecting. It may have detected something, but it may not have classified it correctly, which that in and of itself is actually okay. I mean, it's not horrible. It just has the different numbers. Also, I think the numbers from my version of Bluespawn are from a few versions back of Atomic Red Team, so they might not match up directly. So this allows you to actually test and evaluate the overall coverage that your organization has and what you can actually do. So where would we go to see like what would be the evidence that we could utilize to actually detect these things? Let's say we had a detect that didn't fire, or we had a technique that didn't fire a detect more accurately. Well, this kind of ties into Sysmon, which is another video that I want to do a little bit later. But Sysmon will actually give us the capability where we can run these Atomic Red Team tests, and we can see what exactly that looks like from the logs that Sysmon generates. So we can go through applications and services, choose Microsoft, Windows. It opens up all kinds of different logs. And we can scroll down on the left-hand side to Sysmon operational. We do this, and let me zoom in to make it bigger. Sysmon operational. And now we can see all the Sysmon logs that are being generated. Now, in here, if you go back far enough, you're actually going to see we have DLL host is fired, reg is fired. This is all the stuff that we fired with our tests. And one of the cool things with Atomic Red Team is we can actually see everything that it does has the Atomic Red Team name in it. So now we can be like, well, do we have this command line where somebody invokes cmd.exe with the C flag for channelized? Do we have someone where they're adding in registry keys on our computer system? You don't want to write your signature all the way through for the path to the Atomic Red Team DLL. That would be bad. But at least you're getting an idea of what it is Atomic Red Team is doing. So you can basically start writing some signatures. Now, I like this for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons why I like this is because it's giving you direct visibility into what it is in fact executing. And to be honest, Atomic Red Team is also really cool because if you go into those directories, let me open that up real quick. Let's go back over here, zoom out. If I go back into the Atomic Red Team directory and we actually look at the atomics and we go to the individual atomics, you can actually look at what it is that that specific Atomic Red Team technique is doing, because it actually has the markdown file that it brings with it. So it says, here's the attacks that commands that are ran with PowerShell. So you can actually look at what it is that it's actually executing on your system, which once again can be really, really valuable for you writing your detections. You can basically figure out what is firing, what's not firing on our environment. So coupling that with Sysmon and all of those different things is just the cat's pajamas. I absolutely love it. Here's another one. You can see the current directory. It's kind of a nice way you can also filter. I'll get to that here in a second. You can see that it executed hostname.exe. You can see the parent directory was Atomic Red Team. Now, when you're doing this, you want to be careful if you execute Atomic Red Team, especially on a system that's sending alerts into a SIM. You may not want all of those alerts cluttering up your dashboard. So you could create a filter temporarily that says anytime anything is executing from this directory, don't throw it to the actual alert queue to the analysts and generate a Jira ticket and do all of that. Maybe, shun it off to the side so you can make sure that they actually fired. It's kind of a way that you can clean things up in your environment. So it just makes it really easy and wonderful for you to do this type of adversarial simulation. So I mentioned earlier, one of the things that's useful about doing this is it makes management feel better, right? They feel better about what it is you're doing, what your capabilities are. And to be honest, as you start executing this, you're going to find that there's this huge mismatch and a tremendous amount of work where you're running Atomic Red Team scripts and your SIM is missing like half of them. And when it does detect, it's detecting on a completely different number. That's okay. Once again, we look at what our jobs are. Our jobs are to do detection tuning. And part of an adversarial emulation approach in an organization is to actually turn on the light and see the cockroaches, chase them down, and squash them. And Atomic Red Team will absolutely help you do that. So I mentioned with management, making them feel better. Also, eventually, it'll make you feel better because you're going to feel a lot stronger about your detective capabilities. The other thing, kind of tied to management feeling better, is this also helps you do gap analysis and identify where your weaknesses are in your overall detection approach in your organization. You see, whenever you're going to management and you're asking for money from management, a lot of managers feel like we are constantly in the security industry all the time asking for funds, always asking for money. And I guess that's somewhat true. But we've got to be able to tie that back to a reason. And I hate this. I want to be completely honest. The idea of everything that I just did makes me feel ill. Where we're going through and we're doing detection tuning engineering for just a specific threat actor, for just a handful of specific types of tests that we're running in an environment. This makes me uncomfortable. And it makes me uncomfortable for a wide variety of reasons. But the biggest reason is if we are actually doing this, and we are actually doing this type of detection tuning engineering, we run into a huge problem where we're only detecting like specific techniques by specific threat actors in our environments. And the reason why I think that's bad is because if you do this type of, scripting and, running these different attacks and running these different things, um, you may be able to detect the specific threat actors that CISA is talking about in this alert, but you need to understand that attackers are constantly modifying their different techniques and their strategies. So, why would we want to do this? One, it's a spot check. And I believe in spot checks. In fact, pen testing is a great example of a spot check. But two, this can be a very powerful, effective tool for you and your security team or the people that you're working with to develop a narrative around your defenses and then the offensive techniques the attackers are using. While I really, really, really like to see organizations go through and just hit the whole thing, do an invoke atomic tests all, and just really open the door and see what it is we can and we cannot detect in our organization in a much more comprehensive fashion. It's really difficult to get the type of political cover where you can do this across your entire organization and really get the resources dedicated to make it happen. Also, whenever I'm running invoke Atomic tests all, I'm not providing a narrative. I'm not providing a story to management that is a really good sellable story. Because if I say I ran all of these different scripts and this is what I could and could not detect, all right, I guess, that's neat. Management won't quite know what to make of it. But if I can say I went through and I ran a series of techniques, and these are the specific techniques that CISA discovered the Russian threat actors to be using, that has a narrative. It has a story. It has an arc. It has a villain. It has, protagonists and antagonists in the environment. And that has power. That story and that narrative has power. And Atomic Red Team gives you that type of capability where you can basically have that power. You can have that narrative in your organization. So I strongly encourage you to do this because it is free. It doesn't cost you anything. You can create these narratives without necessarily needing a full red team or a pen test to generate the narrative for you. And ultimately, for me, I want organizations to be doing this because my sole purpose as a red teamer, as a pen tester, is to make my life difficult. And the more organizations are doing adversarial simulation in their environments, and the more that they're tuning their sims, the more difficult they're going to be making my life and the lives of my pen testers. And as much as that sounds horrible, that is a wonderful thing to be celebrated. And to be honest, right now, we're seeing a huge difference in the organizations as far as which organizations are running scripts like this, doing this full type of execution in their environment, testing their sim to make sure it's detecting what it should be detecting, and which organizations aren't. Because I can assure you, the organizations that aren't doing this type of testing, looking at services and doing discovery of different applications, what's executing host name, WMIC process list full, and then correlating that back to what is able to be detected by their sim, it's like night and day, folks. So please look at Atomic Red Team, and I'm just scratching the surface here. Carrie Roberts and Darren Roberts, their team, they have an entire class dedicated to this topic. And it's an Antisyphon. It's available on demand, and it's awesome, and it's good, and you should do it. But Carrie Roberts is also going to start something next Monday where she's going to go through and dedicate an hour of showing people the awesomeness of Atomic Red Team, far beyond anything that I'm doing here. And once again, the goal isn't necessarily, training and make as much money as we possibly can and maximize profits. It's really trying to help the industry. And this is one of those things that you can do to help yourself make my life difficult. Carrie Roberts is actually one of the, that was loud, is actually one of the best pen testers walking the planet today. And today she focuses on defense and detection, tuning, and adversarial emulation. And honestly, I can't think of a better person to be teaching people how to use this tool. All right. So with that, I'm going to go back to camera and let's go ahead and let's go to questions and see what questions we have here.
Going back to the top, we've got the first question is, any plans on doing something with Purple Knight?
Yes, absolutely. That is in the queue. I want to get through all of my existing classes all of my existing labs for my classes first, but I will then go through additional tools. And Purple Knight is one of those things that we've been hearing about. The other one that I really, really like is a tool called Prelude. They have a free utility as well, and they also have a commercial product. And then I don't know how you all feel about this, but I'd love to get your take on it. I'm also thinking about possibly demoing commercial tools. I don't want to make it clear I'm not getting paid, but there are some commercial tools that are just awesome that I absolutely love. Like one of those examples would be like Burp Suite Pro. And if you would like to see that type of demo, just let me know. I would love to share that with everybody.
Tell us in the comments.
Yeah, let us know in the comments. We appreciate that. What is Bluespawn? Joshua, Bluespawn is just a science project that was created at CCDC by a series of university students from Virginia. They weren't allowed to bring in their own EDR or AV, so they literally built their own that could do a handful of detects, thinking that it would actually detect a lot of the techniques that the adversaries would use in CCDC, cyber collegiate defense competition. By the way, the attackers were people like Mubix, Rob Fuller from Hack 5, and Egypt from the Metasploit project. How well do you think that Bluespawn did against some of the best hackers on the planet? Go ahead and type it in your comments, and I'll tell you how it did here in a little bit as well.
We got Lyle telling you his or confessing his professional crush on you.
That's really awesome. I like to keep my stalkers happy and far away. So Lyle, I hope you're happy.
And then CJ, I don't know if it's the CJ, but CJ is offering him socks or
Oh,
telling
wow,
him he should get
that's
socks.
probably CJ. That is probably CJ as well. Yeah, so keep these questions coming. It's a test. Yep. So not a
John, is
question.
there
Go ahead.
any resource you would recommend checking out on how to tune Seam? This is always debate on how you say that effectively.
Right now, there's two things that you can look at. One of them, of course, is Atomic Red Team, right? Go through and do that adversarial simulation for free and see how your sim did. Okay. The other thing is by JP Cert. JP Cert released something called the tools analysis cheat sheet, and I don't think they've updated it in a while. But a lot of the techniques that are actually referenced there, and I'm going to post this to you, Ryan, and you can share it out with everybody. They did a great job of basically going through and showing what are all the different registry artifacts, the different prefetch files that are generated whenever somebody runs these utilities like PowerShell. So that's very good. What's another question? I like how you pop them in. I think that's helpful.
Any experience with MITRE Defend?
Yes, and that is something that we're going to be talking about. There's all kinds of really cool tools that are out there. And the ability using MITRE Defend to actually correlate what are the defensive techniques back with the attack matrix is something that's been a long time coming. And one of the things that we're going to do, it's probably going to be an entire class, but I have the MITRE Engage that I use in the cyber deception, not adversarial emulation, the cyber deception class that we do. But yes, we will be going through Defend as well.
Can MSSP also leverage Atomic Red Team for adversary simulation service? If so, what outcomes should the service primarily deliver? Is there a coverage score?
So if you're an MSSP, it's something that you really should be running just to help make sure that your detections are working properly. The absolute worst time to test your detections and see if they're working is in the middle of an incident, right? I know for some of the sims that are out there, people say, yeah, the sim is great at detecting what ransomware after it fires in my environment. And that's bad. So what this will allow you to do as an MSSP is you can test and see what your detective capabilities are. Now, management at MSPs and MSSPs will be like, well, that's going to waste time. We ain't got time. You really do need to set time aside. It's kind of that, what is it? Stitch in time staves 9. So if you can actually go through the ounce of prevention and a pound of cure. So if you can start doing the assessment in your environment on how well your tools are working, it's going to reduce the false positives in your organization. It's also going to reduce the false negatives as well. And that'll just save you money in the long run as well. Corvus asked about Sliver, which is awesome, from Bishop Fox. That is another C2 framework. And we have used it at BHIS, and we've been very happy with that tool. Just a really, really cool tool. And if you want to see a lot of C2 tools, check out the C2 Matrix from George at Scythe. It's a full matrix of all the different C2 tools that are out there as well. Demo as many products as possible. I'm a little bit, so my concern about it is if I actually go through and I do that, one, I don't want to come across as a shill. I hate that. We try really hard. But at the exact same time, what more than likely is going to happen is I'm probably going to go through and be like, this product's garbage. There's an EDR that I see used all over the place, and I'm not going to say who they are. But every time we work an IR engagement and they have that product, I die inside because getting useful data out of it is just an incredible pain in the ass. So I'll have to think that through. Maybe as I get closer to retirement and get further away from BHIS and kind of I can grow my hair out, my beard out a little bit more. People won't, be like, we're not going to hire BHIS because they talk bad things about our product as well. I've heard that you can never have too many guitars. The number of guitars that I have is very static. I bought this bass guitar right behind my left shoulder a while ago because I got tired of playing straight guitar and then transposing it down, and it never really sounded right. So I got that because it was a PV. Then the this guitar right here is just a little like E000 acoustic, and then this is a Guild M75 that my dad played all the time. And then I have a Strat, and it's an EC Strat that I've heavily modified. I know a lot of guitar purists would hate that, but honestly, I'm not really big into tons of guitars because I can take an absolute Tex-Mex Strat and I can tune it to where it plays fantastic. It doesn't matter. Something from South Korea, don't care. You can make those guitars sound good. And a little tip: this is a thing. The only thing that matters on tone for your guitar are the strings and the pickups. Guitar makes no difference whatsoever for an electric guitar. That's it. And if you don't believe me, Google it. There's a gentleman that went through and he strung up a 2x4. He strung up all kinds of things. And then he just strung it up over an empty air gap, set the pickups on one side, the strings spanned it, and it sounded the exact same. So it's all about the play and getting the action as low as possible. When is the next event like Wild West Hackenfest? Juice Man, we're going to be doing that. He did a shovel. That's true. The next Wild West Hacking Fest will be in a year, actually a year from this week. However, for those of you that just can't wait, Ryan, today we talked about it, and we're going to be doing live events. I think we're going to be doing live virtual events. So we're not going to call them roundups. Maybe we will. I don't know. But they're going to be virtual conferences where we have virtual training and virtual talks, and we'll be doing those online. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Could be as early as November, could be as soon or as late as like January for the next one, but we want to create those events as well. We'll bring back that John Screams Metal Punk. Yes, we are bringing back the metal show. Bo and I will be doing a metal show. I was worried about my voice being able to handle it as I'm getting older, and I just was running through a set list today, and I was able to still sing it without tearing myself up too much. I think I was just getting out of shape before, but that'll be happening again. Live event in New Zealand. Yeah, that's good. Brian, we need to make that happen. Erica's upstairs. She just got home, and I want to get down to New Zealand as quickly as possible. All right. So with that, everybody, I want to say thank you very much. Ryan, do you have something to add?
I'll just drop the link to Carrie's class since we're talking about Atomic Red Team.
Oh, there it is. There's Carrie's.
You can screenshot that, find the URL later. Look it up on our Antisyphon Training website, and I think that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. And I think we have a webcast tomorrow, right? Coming up.
We have one next week. I'm not sure about tomorrow. I have to look at our calendar.
We're probably taking a little bit of a breather, but we will return with the news on Monday, and then Carrie's going to take off and start doing her thing as well. So thank you very much for coming, and tell your friends. Take care, everybody.
Killing it with fire.